Good afternoon, everyone, or good morning, depending on which part of the world you happen to be in. I think I am probably the only one of my regular audience that is actually still in a morning time zone. Uh, Most of the rest of the United States will be afternoon, and you are definitely afternoon. Am I mistaken?
Yeah, it's 5 p.m. where I am right now.
Oh, you're heading into evening.
Yes.
That's right. I always remember you are so much further ahead of me. I never remember how much ahead of me. You might take the award for the person with the most time zone difference.
No, really.
At
Well,
least at least
what-
so far. I mean, unless I like it and convince someone from Australia who's 12 hours difference and who
yeah.
it would be 6 o'clock in the morning for them. So for anyone who is unfamiliar, because we are in a completely different time slot than usual, I am the Eclectic Goat. We are here for Indie Author interviews. We are going to be discussing role playing games, books, steampunk, and all sorts of really fun, interesting things. Um,
Yes, indeed.
and I apologize. I think I have figured this out, but I don't want to risk butchering it. So, can you tell me how to pronounce your name? Like your full, your
It's very boring. It's simply Bonsart Bokel.
okay. I was trying to make that far more complicated than it needed to be.
Yes, yes. That's a lot of people have that tendency. Like it's something like Bonsart Bokel. No, no. I'm Dutch. We have a very plain language.
Well, I mean, you look so fancy. Your name should be fancy too.
Yeah, I mean, my Dutch name, the Americans cannot pronounce, so I stuck with a name that I use for reenactment. And everyone on the
Ah,
fence always called me Bonsert. That was simply my name, so I simply stuck with it. So that's the reason.
can I? I am sure. I mean, I can barely pronounce the regular one, but can you pronounce your uh? I don't know. I guess real name seems like a weird way to
Um,
phrase it, but can you pronounce
yeah,
it for
Alex
us?
van Hoogstraten.
I mean, it's gorgeous. You're right, though. I wouldn't have a prayer.
Yeah, I think it's horribly mundane, but it's long. At least it has that going for it.
Okay. Well, so this was originally going to be pre-recorded. However, as always seems to be the case for me, technical issues abound, and it refused to allow me to do anything except do a live stream. So Bonsart has been kind enough to put up with all of the nonsense that my computer system gives me in almost everything. And if you would just start off by kind of introducing yourself to the audience, um, and let us know a little bit about how you got into writing, what you write, and since a lot of my audience loves gaming, if you want to throw in a little bit about your game too.
Yeah, so I am Bonsert Bokel, well, not an author yet, a writer from the Netherlands, and I am doing YouTube since about for 10 years now, I think, where I have a channel called Radio Retro Future that is dedicated to steampunk. That is kind of like how where I made a series called the Steampunk Beginner's Guide, which is about steampunk and all of the ways it's expressed itself, and it went more and more into the direction of world building and writing. And so I thought I need to throw in my own work, kind of put my money where my mouth is, which led me to write a bunch of short stories, which I also publish in books like these, which I also have in like actual file format, which I called the Association of Ishtar. I think I published the first short story somewhere around 2019, which was called The Call Girl, which is basically the foundation of the entire series. She's the first villain I wrote, and I actually have miniatures of her, which I should have had handy. I do have other miniatures in my vicinity. But yeah, that was the start of an association of Ishtar, my own steampunk series where no, the idea of the series was not just to write some stories, but actually build like a genuine steampunk setting because so much of what steampunk is these days is actually gaslamp fantasy. And I really like my steampunk to be cyberpunk in the past. Anyway, I presented these short stories to a bunch of publishers, and a lot of them loved it, but they thought that the format of the stories, which is written as files, to be alienating to all audiences. So I wrote them together into one book, The Wrench in the Machine, which is kind of like the first book in the series,
I'm
kind of like a proof of
I'm
concept.
I'm sorry. Can you hold that up again? I'm gonna put you full screen so everyone can see.
Yeah, there you go. With a wonderful cover by Staringer, but probably we're going to work on a new one that's more Amazon friendly. And
Ah,
yeah, someone I knew, someone I had on my own podcast, contact me like 1.5 years ago with the request, like, would you like to make a role playing game based on your setting? Because he really loved the Range in the Machine. And that turned into Nightwatch. This is a prototype, which I printed way too many of, but they'll be on our upcoming Kickstarter for the real collectors, for those who want to see how it got started. Now we have new covers for it as well, and yeah, people are really enjoying. The reviews are very positive so far on the system. Still working a bit on the kinks. We need to work a little bit about character creation. Some of them came up with made some very good suggestions for that. So yeah, that's already very far in development. It just needs play testing, and yeah, what else can I say? Yeah, we also have a board game now in development, but that's unfortunately too early for me to reveal too much on. But that's coming as well.
ooh, secrets to drop in the future.
Yes, yes, yes. And also, this is Anwen. Her book is now free on Amazon, by the way, until today. So
Oh,
for
so
those who
everyone
are
needs to jump
listening,
in
you
right now.
yeah, yeah, I'll share the link right away with you, so
If
you
you,
can share it.
yeah, I was gonna say if you can't drop it in the chat, just drop it in the private chat, and I will move it over.
Yeah, let me see. Oh, it's da, 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 da.
So
Yeah, so
tabletop
it's
junkie game says he thinks he actually saw your book a few months back.
like the physical one, or like somewhere on Discord.
Good
What?
question.
Because I don't know where everyone's from. Maybe there are some Dutch viewers. I don't know. But yeah, I mean, I've talked about it with on Dungeons of Dyslexia and some other podcasts. So yeah, and the people are really looking, hoping to see, a proper steampunk RPG. Because there are very few at the moment. So most the steampunk RPGs that I've seen are all, with the exception of GURPS, is actually Gaslamp Fantasy. So
Yeah, there were some like LARP stuff for a while. Um, my brother had roommates that were very into it.
I've heard about some very promising LARPs indeed.
Yeah, they actually used to run a whole bunch all through New England, and I never LARPing has never quite been my cup of tea, but I do have to say I was super impressed by some of the stuff they built for it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um,
Is it right? I see. By the way, I just shared the stream. It still says Lord Toxic.
oh dear. Well, I will have to fix that. I am not actually sure why, because it should have just gone as a completely different thing. Isn't
That-
technology?
Just saying what it says in Discord.
Technology will make our lives easier any day now.
Yes, 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 yes. Isn't technology amazing when it works and does what you want it to?
Well, I did say I was going to re-upload this as the proper
Yeah.
video later, so we will make that work. Welcome to the new people in the chat. We're actually getting, considering how spontaneous this was, we have tabletop junkie games. We have, I'm sorry, I don't know how to pronounce that either. Tina Landy? I'm sure I butchered that terribly. We have Legatus. We have Tomby. Tomby tried to tell me how to do this as a recording, and unfortunately, I'd already gone live by the time his response got to me. Um, Byron, welcome. I Byron occasionally makes a slice and dice stream, but we are happy to have you here. I think that daytime is more his cup of tea. Um, so yes, and Super Mod Eraserhead, who is reminding us that Jacob Ironsides, friend of the channel, is still trying to raise money so that he can relocate his family. They have to move by the end of May, and they have some medical issues, which is making this a little difficult. So, anyone who can donate even $5 or so or share it, that would be great. Jersey, welcome. Byron says he works evenings. That's why he normally can't make it. So, we are extra happy
Mhm.
to have you here then.
Welcome.
Um, Shameless plug, yes.
Yeah.
We are all about the shameless plugs, as long as you're not Wizards of the Coast.
Oh dear, wizards. Oh no. I mean, Wizards of the Coast has never liked its own customer base, so.
Well, you know, I could go into that for ages.
Hmm.
I know that there was a question up here, and I now can't seem to find it. Um, so I believe we were originally going to focus in a little on Casket Girls. Is that what it was called?
The role playing game, Night Watch, or oh no, no, we're gonna do that later this month.
Yes, you are
Now,
also scheduled for Slice and Dice.
yes, yes, yes. So, yeah, I mean, if we're going to talk about my books, Casket Girls is the last one. Actually, had the cover redone recently for, again, for Amazon. Um, but yeah, that was also funded through Kickstarter. Oh, apparently I forgot to bring it, which is odd because I could have sworn I had it in my hands. Oh, wait, here it is. But yeah, that's right now. This is part one. This is the retail version. We also have a special cover for the people who bought it on Kickstarter, and I'm also still selling that one on events. Um, and yeah, I'm working on part two of the Casket Girls right now. So that's about the first draft is about fourths of the way done. I'm working on the final chapters. So yeah, and that's also probably one of the main draws because it has steampunk mechs. I kind of describe it as steampunk BattleTech meets Starship Troopers,
Well,
and
I did.
otherwise I have seven other books to talk about. So
I did find the game and I'm sorry, the question, and we do have another one as well. Tabletop Junkie Games said I always took steampunk was cyberpunk in the past.
yes.
Can you do a little exploring with us about what the differences are? Because I do think that there are people that get a little confused as to what steampunk actually is.
Yeah, so the issue with or why people get confused about steampunk is that it can refer to three different things. For the people who want to learn more about this, I have the Steampunk Beginner's Guide on YouTube where I talk in depth about all this. But basically, steampunk can mean three things, and one of them is what everybody knows is like the costume culture. That's one aspect of it. The second is purely the aesthetic, what you see in games a lot, and then you also have the literature, the books that I'm writing, for example. And yeah, that's kind of the one of the other misunderstood comprehensions is that steampunk does not have a monopoly on the aesthetic that people are familiar with. So you can see this aesthetic being used in different genres as well, and one of those different genres is gas lamp. which is a term created by Katja Foglio to kind of distinguish it from uh, its science fiction counterpart. Like steampunk is science fiction, Gaslamp fantasy is, well, fantasy. So that's kind of like where they differ. And like we also gonna have to get into like what is a genre really, because there's also a lot of miscomprehensions about those. Right, I mean, in Amazon, steampunk is like a keyword, it's a marketing term, because people who like steampunk-esque things or the steampunk aesthetic, they'll like this as well. um, but there is no one of the problems that steampunk has overall as a genre especially is that it doesn't really have a defining work, a masterwork, as it were. Like for cyberpunk, it would be Blade Runner. For science fiction, it could be something like Star Trek, or Dune, perhaps. Like, Dune is more like the masterwork for space opera. Steampunk does not really have that. I mean, the first book that was intended to be actual steampunk is The Difference Engine, by William Gibson and Bruce Sterling, um, who's an author that I don't particularly like. I tried getting through Neuromancer twice, and both times I gave up. Um, but yeah, and it's one of those terms that was just applied to everything. Like kind of steampunk in the convention scene kind of exploded in 2011, and you got like a lot of people who called themselves steampunk and did the whole neo-Victorian thing. Um, but these are not the same audiences. You have like people who like the steampunk literature. You've got the people who like the steampunk aesthetic, who are mostly gamers. That's why steampunk is doing pretty well in the gaming space. Some really best-selling games of the years had steampunk themes. In the board game space, steampunk is. I mean, there are not that many, but when they do, they're pretty popular. Um, and finally the literature, which is also a kind of a particular subset of fantasy slash science fiction fans. um, but those audiences do not necessarily overlap, and I think that is where why marketers in particular have a big big problem with I think that's what's also stopping Hollywood from doing doing steampunk steamed things. Like supposedly um, uh, world famous director who did Jurassic Park, Spielberg.
Steven
Spielberg was
Spielberg. Yep.
allegedly working on a steampunk series for a couple of years. Lumum, I think it was called. But that was, that never seen the light of day. And I think one of the reasons for that is that it is very hard for marketers. Like, to who do we market this shit, right? I
So he went
mean,
with Avatar instead because it was easy.
yeah, I think it is. It's a it's science fiction. With a kind of Smurfs in blue. But I think that like I'm struggling on Amazon to find my core audience. Like, what keywords do I need to use to attract the right type of audience? And it's very eclectic. If steampunk is a
We do
genre,
like
it's very
eclectic.
it's huh
We do like eclectic.
yeah, we do, but people like I'm doing a marketing course right now, and people are trying to advise me on how to sell my stuff. And and their advice would be, write some casual fantasy or casual science fiction first. And if you sell those, people who buy those books will eventually look, oh, the guy also wrote this stuff, and now, but I'm already going into game development, and I noticed from companies that they're looking for something new, and they're looking for something that looks familiar, but also has something like a new factor, an alien factor, and that's kind of like why I think steampunk exploded. Like the steampunk explosion, I think, is also very related to the so-called Iron Age of media, right? The independent production, because this is what's so special about the steampunk costume culture, is that they have conventions, but it's not supported by EA Games or any of those. They're completely, it's completely grassroots, which is pretty unique. And I think that's also, but the problem with the costume community is that these are, like I said, these are different groups, and this is a group of people that are really more into the social aspect about it than they are about the creative aspect about it. So they don't care if they remake whatever everyone else is doing, and that's why a lot of truly creative people, the people who actually made steampunk, the ones whose photos are still being shared around 10 years later, left. Like I left pretty much because there's nothing for me there. It's just boomers who like to dress up in Victorian clothing and have parties, and that's not why I joined that community. Um,
Careful,
and
I think a lot of us are either boomers or very close to it, so
yeah, well, I mean, but
we're old fogies.
yeah, yeah. Well, no, I'm not a boomer, but I'm like late generation X, and the thing is that the average age is pretty up there. It's not a youthful community, and I think that scares a lot of young people off. So and they go into the anime direction if they do steampunk. It's really that Lolita style of
Mhm.
dress that they got from anime. And yeah, and the older guard is, they want to have the parties, they want to have the social events, they don't particularly care about the creative stuff. They like the atmosphere and the immersion that it brings. But yeah, I mean, the Dutch steampunk community at one point was very highly regarded internationally. Then COVID happened, and that kind of just disappeared. And yeah, I will have to see if that community ever gets its mojo back. But like I said, the problem with people who are really interested in social stuff, they also love the drama that comes with it. This is something that I noticed when I once got involved with drama that was caused. And I had this blog called Tupperware Steampunk. That's how I really got started. Was a blog, first in Dutch, then I turned to English. And when I posted a blog, maybe I got like 100 views or something. Then I posted about drama once. All of a sudden, my views went into thousands. You know, and that's kind of like indicative with the culture that they've created, which is a big shame. But I
Um,
never got to get these people infused for my projects or my stories or my books. It's, and I have the same goes for a lot of steampunk creators who are trying to sell on steampunk conventions. They barely sell anything.
there are a couple of comments I'd kind of like to get your opinion on in the chat.
Hmm.
Um,
Right.
oops, shoot, I just accidentally clicked off on one of them. Um, it was one of them. The one I lost was, do you think it's because there are, like, it's hard to define steampunk? Like you said, there's so many different aspects of what makes something steampunk, and then there are people that think if you stick gears on it, it's steampunk. I always think of it as like horror. Like, horror is not a genre in and of itself. Things are horror comedy or horror gothic or horror. There's very little good horror that isn't horror mixed with something else.
Mhm.
And I kind of think of steampunk
Well,
as being
I
the
mean,
same.
like why do people watch those particular flavors of horror, right? And it's because they're looking for a particular type of experience. And like, what is that experience that they're looking for? And I think that there are a couple of problems, and one of them comes back to that social aspect. That when I started, like in 2011, the first rule of steampunk: don't talk about steampunk, because there were people who became like very, uh, well, autistic about their definitions of steampunk, right? And that caused a lot of like actual you know, arguments, like loud, annoying arguments. So they kind of became averse to talking about it, you know. But it meant that they never explored like you know what it is they're doing, and again, you know, the creatives and you know they really drifted purely into the social sphere. And you know that's why the creatives kind of like thought, okay, well, you know, you're not going to support us, you're not going to buy our stuff, you're not helping us really get out there. So you know it's in many ways like it's full of contradictions. Like in one way they're very accepting of new people, but they're not really, you know, big into the creative aspect and what makes steampunk literature and aesthetic so unique. Um, because what steampunk is aesthetically is that it's a combination of pop culture and history, but an especially antiquated pop culture. If you will go to a group of steampunks or people who are self-identified as steampunk, you ask them any questions about like who was Otto von Bismarck, or who's Jonathan Peel, or what is the West Africa Squadron. Like, you know, if you were in Victorian England, you knew who those people were, you know, because they were like some of the most important people of their era. They won't know. Ask them about anything about Jules Verne, they'll likely know, because that's what they care about. They care about pop culture tropes. So the Victoriana that you see on steampunk conventions is not a reenactment, which, by the way, they don't claim to be reenactors. Make that very clear. But what they do know about the Victorian era is the pop culture tropes. You know, why is London always a recurring element to steampunk? Well, because that's what appears in Sherlock Holmes and all the other science fiction from that early era of romantic futurism. And same goes for Paris and other capitals like maybe Delhi. You know, that's why no, there's barely any steampunk about the Netherlands. You know, unless that story includes a Van Helsing, right? The vampire hunter from Bram Stoker's Dracula, because he was Dutch. So uh, again, like everything has to be connected to pop culture tropes. And the thing with steampunk authors is that yes, they do, yeah, use a lot of pop culture tropes, but they also love referring to their own local histories. They love blending it with histories. And this is, someone I think asked about steampunk, cyberpunk in the past. Well, that right there, right? You have your historical setting that's pretty historically accurate. If you watch my lore videos, I have lore videos about my setting on YouTube. That is lore that does not occur in the books. And you know it contains a lot of actual historical facts. You talked about the casket girls, that's actually a historical reference. And you know, and then combining that actual history with science fiction tropes, you know, that's what we do with the Association of Ishtar. And yeah, so we're kind of trying to build this community of writers who, you know, love history, and then kind of like take that history, put it in the Association of Ishtar setting, and like add science fiction tropes essentially. Especially the wrench in the machine. For those who don't know, it's a reference to the ghost in the machine. And yeah, there's a lot of cyberpunk themes in there. Although I also did a lot of research on British policing and what that was like in the 19th century. It's very interesting. Um, but yeah, and then there's kind of like that disconnect between like the costume culture, who are really into pop culture tropes and anime stuff, and the yeah, the literary people who really love their history and you know, antiquated science fiction. So I hope that I don't want to go too far off track, but yeah.
No problem. Prophetic said that, at least in his opinion, the difference is power source, and I think that's supposed to be aesthetic. Cyber is computer, steam is air, diesel is gas, solar is green. Would you agree with that? So cyberpunk is computer related, steampunk
I
is
am not sure what he means. Like I said, that steampunk is also an aesthetic, but also a genre. So,
right. But I think when someone was talking about what was the difference between cyberpunk and steampunk,
well,
he
he's
was
talking about, but there he specifically is talking about aesthetic differences. And I have issues with that because, first of all, I don't like all the whatever punks, right? I mean, solar punk isn't even a real genre because the only ones I've seen actually talking about and actually care about the genre seem to be bloggers, right?
I
If you
was
look at solar
I
punk,
I had never even heard the term solar punk before, so this
yeah,
is my
well,
first
it's
introduction.
I mean, here's a problem, and I wanted to talk about this at some point, where there is this really kind of incestuous relationships between bloggers. Like, oh, I want to talk about steampunk. Oh, let's see what all these other bloggers said. So there are just a lot of bloggers just copying each other's homework, and they created kind of like this alternate reality. Um, where like some genres are like these massive things, but like look on Amazon for diesel punk, look on Amazon for solar punk, or you'll get like close to nothing. You know it, it's even it's so small. I mean, steampunk is a niche genre, but like I mean, diesel and solar are even more so. Um, so he's talking about the aesthetical differences, and again, I also said at the start that steampunk does not have a monopoly on the aesthetics. Um, and the thing is, with the when I say cyberpunk in the past, like cyberpunk is about exploring the relationship of humans with technology in the near future, and the kind of whole idea about steampunk is that it is about, okay, well, what if we take that technology, but then in the 19th century, right? And then we also get into the conversation again about pop culture, like why is it the Victorians, right? Well, what's that? Because originally the term steam was not a reference to the aesthetic; it was a reference to the era. Um, and again, because that's the 19th century is also the birthplace of pop culture. You know, it's the era that we started with disposable media. If you look at the era before, well, not no, before the printing press. Let's go there, right? I mean, who were those eras pop culture icons? You know, it was Julius Caesar, King Arthur. But fiction was extremely expensive. It was something only the higher classes could really enjoy. The lower classes depended on like verbal storytelling, right? So there's like all these folk tales, but only the folk tales that were actually written down are remembered, and that started after the printing press. So you got all of a sudden that folk heroes became like recurring characters. Like we have the Vos Reinaarden, which is about kind of like the first furry that I'm aware of. About this very salacious fox that is like screwing everyone over. Um, and then you have Tau Eulenspiegel. I'm sure there is like kind of like an early version of Punch, um, who was like this trickster, kind of like the Volksreinaarde in many ways, but you know he was kind of like this kind of very smart traveler that was like deceiving everyone. Of course, he was primarily deceiving like what we call kerels and nobles and clergymen. Um, right, but when we have like we go into the 19th century and we've got like the modern printing techniques, we start having like dime novels and penny dreadfuls, like this really cheap printed on pulp stories for the lower classes, because this is also an era where literacy rates start increasing dramatically. So um, written fiction became like viable at all price points. And yeah, that like then we get like the popularization of Jack the Ripper, but we also get like all these new 19th century like Spring Heel Jack, Sweeney Todd, like all these, and eventually, of course, Sherlock Holmes and all those types of characters, and of course, the dime novels had all like Buffalo Bill was popularized through dime novels. So you got like this entire blow up of pop culture that wasn't there before, at least not in the shape that we know it today. Right, and eventually that goes. God, why does people say that Mad Max is diesel punk? No, it's post-apocalyptic, folks. This is not controversial. God
Well,
damn it.
I think it's one of those things like I was saying that, horror can be combined with other genres and
Yeah, well, I mean, diesel punk. Okay, so here's the funny thing about the term diesel punk, right? Did you know that this originated from role playing?
which the steampunk or Mad Max?
No, the term diesel punk. It was actually made up by some guys that made a quote unquote diesel punk game, which was a fantasy game that I cannot find because apparently no one played it. And this is what I mean with the incestuous nature of blogs. The only reason why diesel punk became popular was because people started talking about diesel punk. Like bloggers started talking about diesel punk. But there was no, like, when I asked people like what are examples of diesel punk, and like no one could name me an example. And now the term diesel punk has been stretched so thin that pulp is now diesel punk, Indiana Jones is now diesel punk, Lovecraft is now diesel punk, Mad Max is now diesel punk. Where do these people get this from? I have no fucking clue. But all these established movies made in established genres like pulp, post-apocalyptic, all of a sudden are now called diesel punk. And no, no,
Apparently there is a
frostpunk is steampunk. Oh my god. Fuck. This is what I mean. No, frostpunk is like one of the masterpieces of steampunk. In fact, you've got your cyberpunk setting in the past. You can't get much more steampunk than that, and then they've like included like a realistic enough aesthetic to it as well. They really created a very immersive setting there. Like I actually made 3 videos on diesel punk eventually, where I talk about okay, what is diesel punk? What is it really, right? And what I would call diesel punk is Star Wars in the past. If steampunk is cyberpunk in the past, diesel punk is a subset of steampunk, but a far more greater emphasis on good and evil. Kind of like noir in many ways. That's why there are a lot of noir influences in diesel punk. A lot of, and here's the thing: the thing of diesel punk is often set in the future as well. But it has this quasi historical 1940s setting there. And I think that is because they're so diesel punk has a very is very pre-possessed to World War II iconography, and one of the reasons is that well, look at the soldiers on both sides. You've got like the American soldiers. Let's talk about that aesthetic for a moment. Like, what do they look like? They've got baggy clothes. They have earth tones like khaki green. And round helmets. Now, compared to the Germans, what do the Germans have? They have angular designs. This is very important because angular makes everything look hostile. uh, you know, Take the same general armor, make one round, make one sharp, and you got like good and evil right there. You see the same in Star Wars, by the way. That's why I also say, well, it's kind of like Star Wars in the past, because look at the Rebel ships. They all have these conical shapes everywhere. Look at the Empire ships. Like, it's far more geometrical. Like, the Star Destroyers are triangular. The Tie Fighters are round, but then with the angled wings, and that's all very intentionally. So that's kind of like where Diesel Punk gets its aesthetic from, is that comparison between round shapes and sharp shapes. Um, and Yeah, it's a very very small thing. And steampunk overall, like in many ways, diesel punk is just steampunk, right? It has like pop culture tropes combined with history, just like steampunk, but it has that very big emphasis, aesthetically speaking, on round and sharp, and their stories are far more interested in kind of like the good guy fighting against the bad guy, very much the pulp thing. That's why it's extremely hard to distinguish it from normal pulp to a point. Like, is there even a real difference between diesel punk and typical pulp characters? Not really, but yeah.
Um, you have a couple more questions from the chat that I really want to make sure that we get to.
Hmm.
In your personal opinion, why aren't there more steampunk games and settings? Space 1889, for example, is more Victorian age spacefaring.
There is a Space 1889 game. I think it's from the DOS era. It's very old, but they do exist. Um,
I
but
think
I
he's
mean,
acknowledging
we've
that.
got,
I think he's just
huh?
saying it's more Victorian and less steampunk, though I'm not sure what the difference would be.
I also got like, I mean, in many ways, like if you believe in such things, like Space 8089 is by a lot of people called Everpunk, which is also kind of like this own niche of science fiction. Because in the past they used to believe that space wasn't like had was I'm not even sure what space stuff is, but like they had this idea that space was filled with ether, that everything was floating in a fluid called ether. That's where the term etherpunk comes from, and that's I think also the whole idea behind Space 1889. And I do not have it at hand, but Alex, oh, what is his name? Alex something. He made a series called Castles in the Sky, which I have the art books of, and that is also an ether punk setting. Um, but also a lovely Art Nouveau art style with a lot of references to actual historical events and designs. Um, but yeah, the question was why or not. I mean, there are like you've got of course well it's kind of more well I guess its story is a bit more steampunk than dieselpunk. What's it called again, the one that also has a board game by Jamie Stegmaier. The board game is called Scythe Iron Harvest. um I was disappointed in it, RTS, unfortunately. Then you have They Are Billions, bit more on the pulpy end genre wise, but it self identifies as steampunk. But it's kind of like more futuristic steampunk, where they take the aesthetic and put it in a post apocalyptic setting, really. Um, of course, the Frostpunk series. I don't know if they're still working on it, but they did announce they were going to make a role playing game based on it. But they recently, 11-bit Studios recently canceled a project, which I don't think was Frostpunk. But they are afraid that there is the market for single player games is too small at the moment. There is, I mean, there is Disco Elysium, a bit more alternate history than steampunk, but very close. Right now, some members of that same studio are now working on a game called Glass House, I think it is called, which is very similar in style to Disco Elysium. I mean, yeah, I mean, there is. Well, I mean, this is Abandonware, Rise of Legends. Um, I mean, if you look for it, there are quite some, but a lot of it is like the thing is more that a lot of the steampunk projects are really passion projects. Um, like small studio guys new to gaming have an idea for a steampunk game, and yeah, they completely underestimate it. So I wouldn't say. I mean, if steampunk is big somewhere, I would say it's in gaming, really. But I mean, what is enough? What is big? I mean, it will never grow as big as, let's say, general fantasy. But I mean, there are plenty of steampunk themed games that made it game of the year. So I mean, Dishonored is more Gaslamp fantasy. You also use the angular style of Dieselpunk, by the way. But yeah, it depends. Like again, steampunk is a very eclectic thing. You can go into all kinds of directions, but where the genre works best. is in what you call it is in an alternative history setting. And I think there's just a lot of ignorance on the topic because people do not have, they don't talk enough like what makes steampunk steampunk. And I think if you like apply to an alternative history setting, you let go of the goddamn class struggle trope, you can make something amazing and make people interested in history as well.
Last question I had highlighted, though I think there are some more I've missed because I can't see both at the same time. Um, Byron, I think had to go, but I'm sure he'll come back and check out the answer later. Are you using a series Bible to keep track of characters and key
Absolutely
events?
not. Nope.
No. Interesting.
Nope. Nope. It's a complete waste of time. And if people started focusing more on writing stories and instead of making Siri Bibles, I mean, my Siri Bibles are kind of like the role playing books, basically. Um, the closest thing, but no, I just write the stories, and people wonder, like, how do you, are you so productive? Oh, I don't waste days on working on setting and world design. If people stop doing that and just focus on the stories, I think they're not only will their stories improve, they'll be far more productive.
And you can just kind of keep track of the key events through a series. Like some people
I
like.
mean, sometimes I need need to keep. Sometimes I read my stories again, or I go into like what was this character again, but I don't know. Like my books are not character focused. My books are focused on the concepts that I want to explore. So I don't. I think that's the big difference between writing low and high concept, but that's a whole other rabbit hole I don't want to get into right now. But like I write high concept stories, which means that I focus on the themes of the story rather than the characters. My characters are POV characters.
Mhm.
In case of the Casket Girls, the actual main characters are not even POV characters. Uh, so yeah.
Hmm, interesting. I do a lot of editing, and one of the things I find tends to be an issue other than just basic spelling and grammar is people
Hmm.
who write either a series or a very long book will sometimes, they start out calling someone Henry and they're calling him Harry by the end of the book or
I mean, I had made that mistake. I I changed the spelling, but I corrected that in the meantime. But yeah, someone called out like, oh, well, here he's written this way, there he's written that way. But yeah.
yeah, sometimes there'll be dates that, end up being like they kind of don't line up or so I'm sort of fascinated by somebody who can kind of keep that. I'm editing a role-playing game right now and
Mm.
I found a spot where the rules contradicted each other in a couple of different places. So,
That's always hard with writing. With writing, I mean, I'm working on my own role playing game right now. Now, I try to keep it a light RPG, so I want to make the barriers to entry as low as possible. And I had some industry professionals who were that kind to give me some very critical feedback on it. Yeah, and yeah, they agree that the book has greatly improved since then. Um, but yeah, no, it's hard. Um, that's why playtesting is so important. Which, by the way, people who are interested in playtesting Nightwatch, you can do so on our Discord. The link should be on the Kickstarter pages, which I will plug real quick if I can again somewhere. But
yeah, I think Eraser has actually been
yeah, I saw him share links,
posting
most
it
of
a
them on my
few
YouTube
times.
channel, but maybe also post at the Kickstarter link. Yeah. So we're
We
almost at 400 followers. So please spread the word so we can launch with 400 followers. Hopefully next month. That is my hope. But yeah, I still need to speak to some people, and some things are still in production that I need to show off on the Kickstarter page, like our, our own miniature range. But anyway, back to the topic at hand.
Yeah, we also have a specific playtest thread on the Discord. If you're
Oh yeah.
interested in invites, you can do that. Opinion on making a book of multiple short stories in a steampunk setting to expand it through different points of view.
Um. like when I write my short stories, again, these are also for sale on Amazon, right? I have this one, for example. Oh wait, that's the wrong book. Oh, there one. And when right, this is the archaeology companion, right? But again, I write high concept, right? And I and I assume, like, based on your focusing on the POVs, that it's a short, that it's low concept setting. Um, like, I'm not that enamored with different points of view story. Because first of all, you really need to care about the characters for that to matter. Like, what I focus on, and for instance, is this, and to expand the setting, is that I explore completely different concepts in each book, each story. So it will probably introduce, like, there might be recurring characters, maybe, perhaps, but mostly they're with completely different characters witnessing some type of anomaly, horror, creature, whatever, or problem. So whenever I write a book, it's actually something completely new. Um, and what I've done, especially, like, this one is the Archaeology Companion. It's part of this. It is inspired the setting of the second novel, Bound for the Sticks. So I wrote the short stories before the bigger books. So that's a major importance. And yeah, I don't know, right? I mean, it could be interesting, but only if it's if it's a mystery. Like, why did a character do something really out of character? But like how people often describe such plots to me, it's like they're working in a plot hole only so they can resolve it later. Um, but when I am a reader, I want to have, like, the full thing. You know, that's kind of like also my problem with people like Brandon Sanderson, who will, like, have a story, then he'll take a break to bitch about the banking system in the world, which is not relevant to the story. But 5 books down the line, all of a sudden that lore becomes important. Okay, so it's yeah, I don't know. It's all in execution, but I think it's also a very we have a very different style. I'm guessing on what I read in the question. So I really focus on the concepts. Like, I write more like Star Trek episodes, for instance, where you just happen to have the same crew going through a completely different problem and situation. Did that answer the question? I think that was very rambly, but
That's all right. I think it did. I think it did probably answer the question for most people. You might get some questions later on behind the scenes about the difference between high concept and low concept, because
oh
I
dear.
think, like diesel punk and solar punk, I don't think that those are quite as frequently used terms as I don't think they're at, kind of kitchen table terms, shall we say. However,
Um,
we are starting to kind of come to the close of our hour, and I want to make sure that you have time to plug your stuff in kind of a summary. Eraserhead has your Kickstarter up, and I'm sure he's going to be putting the other ones up. So if you would like to talk about what's coming up next, when your Kickstarter drops, any books you have coming out, events you'll be attending, etc.
Yeah. So, yeah. Well, for the current projects, I'm working hard on Night Watch. It's really a matter now of finishing, the Kickstarter page, and then we should be ready for launch. As place testing continues, this keeps being updated. We'll have 4 new books. A core player, the Puppet Master Guide, which is for game masters, the Player Guide, which is basically a thinner version of it, which is just for the players, with some basic information. We'll also have our first lore supplement, which is Rising Tide, which is the um, about the Royal Dutch Commonwealth and Europe. and like how the whole setting developed, which we did not talk about, but that's fine. Um, and what else? Yeah, of course, I'm working hard on part two of the Casket Girls. First book is already for sale on Amazon, which, for those who are just joining us, is kind of like steampunk battle tech meets Starship Troopers. And yeah, we also have our own miniature range, some of which is already for sale on my personal web store, while others will be on offer on the Kickstarter that is coming up. Yeah, for those, like I said, we also have a YouTube channel. You can also watch the Steampunk Beginner's Guide on there, but also the Association of Ishtar lore videos. So yeah, there's a lot of content on there. And for those who are into music and Fallout, I also made a radio station for Fallout 4, which is part of Old World Radio 2, which is a mod that you should still be able to download for Fallout 4. Um, and yeah, say hi to Enwin, I guess.
Okay, well, thank you very much for coming. This has been incredibly informative. Lots of discussion on terms and understanding how things fit into categories, which has not taken place in any of my other interviews so far. So I really appreciate it. I always try and learn one new thing every day, and I learned many, many new things today. So,
You're welcome.
starting with, I had no idea solar punk was a thing. So, thank you everyone for coming. I know this was kind of spontaneous. It was lovely to have people in the chat with so many great questions. I am the Eclectic Goat. We just recently passed 500 subscribers. We do
Congrats.
still need hours in order to reach monetization goals. Not that I'm terribly concerned about monetization, but my understanding is YouTube is nicer to you once you've crossed the magical threshold. Um, so we are going to be doing a little competition. For any of you who have seen my post, or you can find it under the community posts, I have a little lamb that needs a name, and I need watch hours. So this Wednesday, we are going to have a little competition. Everyone can drop their name suggestions um, in the chat, and if we reach over 100 watch hours on that one video between the live stream and the few days after, then we will take a vote, and whatever suggested name wins. It cannot be vulgar because the International Registry will not allow me to do that. However, if you'd like to upset Eraserhead by naming the lamb pineapple on pizza, we can do that. Also, if you have a book, a pet, something else that you would like to be named on an international registry of. Yes, Eraserhead suggested that you can also watch the 4 hour long dumpster fire episode of our Carnival Watchover. It is terrible and hysterical all at the same time. Hello to Blaze Reason. I'm sorry we're just getting done, but it is nice to see you. So, welcome on the tail end here. But I am probably going to be doing some other little competition things to try and get watch hours up over the next couple of months. So, keep an eye out. You can find us on Discord. You can find us on, obviously, YouTube and Twitter, all under the Eclectic Goat. And I hope
Yeah.
to see you all there.
Uh,
Yes?
yes. I can make one last comment, if I may. We also have a Discord where I do give writing workshops from time to time. Because the Association of Histar is supposed to be a collaborative project. So, yeah, you can find those on the Kickstarters as well.
Good to know. All
And
right.
one final thing for the people who want to support the Kickstarter, we also have a VIP program where if you join it for $1, you'll get extra content if you make a physical pledge. So, there's that.
Also good to know. All right. Well, thank you very much to everyone. We hope to see you on Wednesday's stream and happy headbutting.